Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another live edition of Mic'd Up Sports, the show that goes in depth with people who build our sports community. If you're watching us live on Facebook, we're glad you can join us. And if you're following along, wherever you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or our YouTube channel, thank you for joining us there as well. My guest for this morning is Janay Morton, an assistant coach at Minnesota State-Mankato. She came over from Jamestown. If the name sounds familiar, she is a graduate of Osseo High School and then played Division I basketball at Eastern Michigan before spending a season at Nebraska. Janay, thanks for coming on. And I remember when you and I reconnected, you had said coaching was an accidental discovery in your career path. So what do you make of this journey? It sounds like you're all into coaching now, being with your second program.
Yeah, so originally I wanted to do something in medicine. And so that's kind of the plan that I followed all throughout college. And then it wasn't until after I graduated that I kind of got into more coaching situations as far as camps, different missionary trips and things like that. And then just a lot of prayer, to be honest, and asking God, like, hey, what's the next direction you want me to take? Because I just wasn't 100% sold on medicine at that point. And so long story short, just heard a word from the man above. And next thing you know, I was in Jamestown, North Dakota, starting my career. And like you said, I love it. This is really where I find my joy. I love pouring into the younger generation. And so that college generation, I feel like it's such a precious time, as it's the first time that these players are away from home, most of them. And then they're looking for growth. And so just for me to be a part of their everyday life is something special.
And we'll get to that as the podcast moves along, but every story has a beginning, Janay. Yours, of course, included a stop at Osseo, but I'm curious, do you recall the first moment or memory that got you hooked on the sport of basketball?
Honestly, it's been since I was younger. My dad used to play pickup ball Saturday mornings down in Minneapolis. And so he would always drag me along. And naturally, I would pick up a basketball and start shooting around. And so I think that's where I first found the love for the game. Is I was just around it, with my dad being there. And then his friends would bring, some of their sons over. And so we kind of just play basketball the entire time on the side while our dads are playing. And so I think that's where the love first came, is just being around it.
So in those days, who would win those pickup games when you were a kid?
Usually me. It was probably me. I was beating the boys. So those were good times. But I mean, training against guys, it's good for you. You play against people who are a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, might jump a little bit higher. And so it teaches you to play the game differently. Not that playing against women doesn't do that, but it teaches you a different part of the game to master.
And not to mention some other intangibles. I know a lot of college teams and even pro teams have male scout teams. I recall when the Lynx won their championships, Tyus Jones actually was a part of the Lynx scout team in practice, and players shared some stories. Of course, we all know where Tyus ended up. So
yeah,
you got that experience early playing against guys, and it sounds like it proved to be educational.
For sure.
Who would you consider your role model in the sport of basketball as you were growing up and developed a love for the game that continues to this day? Who were the players you idolized?
The players, definitely Candace Parker. Watched a lot of her when I was younger and really just admired her love for the game and just her skill. As I, grew older, Maya Moore was definitely another one that I really admired, just the swag she plays with. And just her poise that she plays with as well. And you could just tell with the way she treated her teammates, especially when she was with the Lynx and I was able to see her play in person. That played a huge part of my game. After that, I'd probably say there's a couple. Kevin Garnett for sure was someone as a kid I grew up watching the big ticket when he was playing in Minnesota. I think just his dog mentality, how he came out aggressive, was definitely something that I admired. So those would probably be my top three: Candace Parker, Maya Moore, Kevin Garnett. I could probably name off a couple more, but I'd say top three, those would be the ones.
Well, on that note, Janay, does that mean you're a fan of Uncut Gems?
Uncut Gems?
That's the movie Kevin Garnett appeared in with Adam
Oh,
Sandler.
is it? I've never seen that movie, so I guess I'm not a true fan then, if that's what that means. But I'll have to look that one up.
That was just me having a little fun, Janay. I don't have any requirements on fandom, so that's okay. I
Okay,
don't
good.
because we know Kevin Garnett more for his basketball than his acting,
Yes,
but
yes.
Uncut Gems was a hidden gem, no pun intended. On a related note,
Okay.
according to my research, you once had a full one-on-one conversation with Maya Moore. You mentioned Maya being one of your favorite players. How did that come about? What did you two
Mhm.
talk about? And how much were you trying not to geek out, I guess, getting the chance to communicate with Maya Moore?
Yep. And I'm sure she might see it as different. She probably doesn't even remember. I saw it as like, oh, this is a full conversation I got to have with someone in comparison to probably the other appearances she does around people. But it was actually at the Athletes in Action camp at the University of St. Thomas. There was a UTC camp, Ultimate Training Camp. Highly suggest athletes to participate in that. But so she made an appearance there and was just talking about her faith and how her faith, just in relation to basketball. And afterwards, she actually was generous enough to take time to speak with some of us athletes. And so, of course, all the women basketball players who were there, the college basketball players, are like, I got to talk to her. And so that was pretty cool just to be able to, it was just me and her just talking one-on-one and just about faith and things like that. And so that was also another thing why I really admire her, is just because of her faith and her willingness to step out in that and not allow basketball to kind of consume who she is.
Not allowing basketball to consume her, I think, is an understatement considering what she did, stepping away from the sport to get her now husband out of prison.
Yep. Prime example. I mean, right there, she felt called to something else despite all of the stardom and the accolades that she had. I mean, that's not easy to step away from. And so that was actually another part that in my journey, stepping away from playing basketball, that was a lot of where my inspiration came from, just seeing that another person in faith who was successful in basketball was able to walk away from it, and not at a point where like it just hit rock bottom. So I'll leave, but at a point where things were going well, just for her to be able to do that helped me out a lot in my decision as well.
And that's something we'll touch on as well as we move our way through your oral history with basketball. But faith, a big driver in Maya Moore's life. I got glimpses of that through the Faith and Family Night events that she would participate in with Minnesota. So we got to have a few chats, and I take the mindset that I'm just here to share stories. So my reputation isn't tied to your success. And if faith is a big part of your identity, I'll embrace that. I love talking to players and sharing things that aren't necessarily related to basketball, because I say this all the time in broadcasts and in this podcast series, you're more than your stat sheet, you're more than your records. And as long as you can remember those things, you'll make a difference no matter where you end up. And Maya Moore clearly making a difference. And I guess we shouldn't be surprised she got her husband out of prison after a wrongful conviction, because no matter where she goes, she wins, right?
Yeah, that is very true.
Well, speaking of winning, you did a lot of that at Osseo. You reached the state tournament a couple of times, got to play in the championship round against Hopkins as a junior. Osseo, they've had some history. They won state in 2000, and they've had some good teams over the years. So what led you to Osseo, and what do you remember most about the high school experience and getting to play alongside Phyllis Webb, who was another outstanding athlete, another multi-sport athlete like yourself? You were a volleyball, basketball athlete. She was basketball, track, and Olivia Antilla, I know, joined the team as a senior, and she's coaching or just finished coaching AAU and staying involved with the game. So maybe you don't get the name recognition of Hopkins, but I'd have to think those 4 years at Osseo, it was a lot of fun.
Yes. Yeah. No, I really enjoyed my time at Osseo. And Coach Joey Waters, she was amazing. You know, she really drove our team and she challenged us as players, and she didn't allow our egos to get the best of us. She definitely was able to find a way to tone those things down and help us mature as players that were successful and young successful players. And of course, Coach John Reeser, again, he was amazing too, assistant, and then moved into that head coaching position after a while. Again, he was another one who just patiently matured us, honestly, and was able to help us just grow in that manner and to be, you know, a person of character while playing basketball. But what led me to Osseo, I mean, I guess that's just kind of how things worked out. It was the district I was in. You know, Park Center, of course, was close by, but we just decided with Osseo, and a couple of my friends I knew who played basketball and were talented as well. You got Michaela Bailey, who also played with the Gophers, that I played with for a couple of years. And it was exciting to be able to play with them. And I think what really the great experience was, I started off younger, 8th grade, was on the JV team. And so every day I'm running over from the junior high, across the parking lot to the high school. And I think the upperclassmen who were on the varsity team really took me under their wing, took care of me, made sure I was good, and you know, still became friends with me, even though I was the baby of the group. And so I think even just that experience alone was like, I want to be a part of this. I want to continue to be a part of this program. And so therein lies, that's when I grew up and stayed in the Osseo program. But again, had so much fun playing, had a lot of success. That was great. But I think as far as our team, just relationship wise, enjoying each other is probably the best part.
I'm thinking though, you were this close to having Caleb McMorris as a teammate if
I
you
know.
decided to go on Park Center. Although again, Phyllis Webb, Olivia Antilla, Michaela Bailey, I think they were pretty good teammates too. I got to see them play a couple
Yeah.
times, but that's how it's crazy
Yeah.
to think about though.
I know. I know. We had a pretty good team, like you said. You know, might not have you know, been known as the Hopkins, but people knew when Osseo was in the gym that you had to come ready to hoop for sure.
And as we noted, Olivia Antilla came in her last year, and kind of amusing that you also changed schools in college as a senior.
hmm
We'll get to that in a little bit, but that was the year you got to the championship round. Of course, you had to go up against what would be the three-peat with Hopkins and the Coffee Sisters in particular. So they proved to be a tough assignment, as was usually the case with Hopkins in those days. Well, there's still a tough assignment now. But when you got Olivia on the team and then you got all the way to the championship round, I know you got the silver medal, which is, hey, something that not everyone can claim. But what did you enjoy most about that ride, getting the chance to go all the way? And then you got back there, reached the semifinal round the following year. What did you
hmm
enjoy most about that experience? And how do you think that symbolized the growth and development you put in with basketball?
Yeah. Honestly, I think first and foremost, like just the joy that our team was able to experience as we were playing at that level. You know, back then we were playing at the Target Center, and so just the high alone of being able to play on a professional court where, you know, two levels up and you got the Minnesota Lynx playing on that court. I mean, it was amazing. So I think that's the first thing, is just the joyful experience me and my teammates were able to have in doing that. And then I think second part of that experience was just being on a big stage, you know what I mean? And being in that atmosphere and feeling the pressure, you know, feeling that pressure and knowing college coaches are watching, and you know, just being able to say, hey, I'm going to perform, you know, I'm going to meet expectations or exceed them. And I think that's fun too, just being able to do that and to compete at that level. I'm a huge competitor. And so that was exciting as well. So I'd probably say those are the top two things with that experience.
And since we've talked about some of the teammates you played with at Osseo, what would you make of the friendships you established? Again, Phyllis Webb, an equally impressive athlete. Track, I think, was one of her best sports. I'll never forget that state meet where she and Taylor Anderson had that showdown
Mhm.
in the 200, I think. And then Taylor tweaked a muscle and Phyllis said, "Get on my back. I'll take you back to camp." And Taylor still has a
Yeah.
picture of that. Michaela Bailey, of course, went to the Gophers. Olivia became the leading scorer in her 2 seasons at Florida A&M. So all
Mhm.
of you did great things in college and beyond. What do you remember most about those friendships, and what do you enjoy most about getting the chance to make them at Osseo?
Yeah, I think one of the things is because we all had a competitive spirit, like that naturally you kind of you gravitate towards people like that. And so I think every day just being able to compete and practice and having conversations of, hey, like this is where we want to be at. I think that alone created a bond. But then off the court, just being able to hang out pregame, hanging out with each other, doing things, you know what I mean? I think those are like it's those little moments that as you start to stack them up and they build up, it becomes, a monumental thing of memories. And so that's probably the part I enjoy most is just the little memories that we created in between. And then I think just to see all of us go off after we graduated and be successful. I had a great time playing with Phyllis Webb afterwards at Eastern Michigan. Had an outstanding time. It was nice to have a little piece of home with you as you go away to college, and even just watching Mick play throughout her career and just seeing Liv's success as well was really cool to see. And so, I think I also appreciate just the family like friendship we had. I mean, Olivia's mom and my mom, they still talk now. They hang out all the time. Very good friends. Phyllis's dad has always been a part her and her mom and her brother and her sister. They've always been a part of our family. And same with Mick. My mom worked at the same place as Mick's dad. Like there's just all these things that were intertwined that allowed us to also be family off the court.
Well, as you noted, you played at Eastern Michigan and then moved to Nebraska. But in terms of the college recruiting aspect, in your case, Janay, how many offers did you get, and what led you to start your career at Eastern Michigan?
Yeah, I had a couple offers on the table. And so, I had places to choose from, and that's a blessing in itself, just to be able to do that. But what really led me to Eastern Michigan, I think one, just when I went on campus and, the dream that Coach Verdi and his staff talked about at the time was Coach Haney, Coach Rob, and Coach Finley was there. And I think they just sold something that I knew I wanted to be a part of, as far as a competitive from a competitive standpoint, a spirit like that, and just feeling homey. And then my mom's family is not too far down the street in Toledo, Ohio. And so I think I was very excited just to have them be a part of my career and be a part of my college experience. And so they would always, they were rolling in deep to the games. And so it was just so much fun just to have them at the games cheering me on, just because, I mean, that's 11 hours away from Minnesota. And so growing up, we'd go over there for a summer, things like that, hang out, family reunions. But I really got to spend so much more time, especially with the younger ones, my younger cousins. And so that was something else too, that was like, hey, it's still home away from home, only 35 minutes from Toledo, Ohio. I've got my granny down there and cousins and everything, aunties, uncles. So that was really special too.
Do you recall when you got your first offer?
That's a good question. My very first, I'm gonna be honest with you, like I don't think I do, which is crazy, which kind of puts things into perspective. When you think about when you're younger like that and you're so stressed out, it's like, what am I gonna do? And it's like, you might not even remember the first school that offered you. You know what I mean? Like going on down the road, there's, yeah, that's a milestone, but I think there's so many other things happening as well that make your experience. So I can't give you the answer to that one, unfortunately.
Well, that's okay. You sound pretty happy with the decisions you made. Although I do wonder if you,
Mhm.
are there any milestones you remember, like getting 1,000 points in college or in high school, or maybe your first bucket? Anything?
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I remember. Yeah, I remember some stuff.
Okay.
Definitely. The 1,000 points in high school. I remember that night. Get my basketball, taking that picture. They actually did Phyllis and I's recognition at the same time, and so I still have that picture on my phone. And then I remember my thousandth point in college as well. We were actually playing Monmouth, and my teammates, like, when I believe I hit it on a three, and my teammates just jumped up and celebrated because we were away. I mean, we're in Monmouth. That's a long ways from Michigan. So they jumped up, celebrated. One of our managers, he had created like a little sign for me that he drew up. And so afterwards, I got to carry the little sign, took pictures and stuff like that. So those were special moments as well. So I remember a little bit, you know.
Well, that's a relief, because if you didn't, then I would start to get worried about what basketball
My
might have done.
experience?
Maybe, or no, not that I doubted your experience, but I would have been worried that, oh, maybe you got hit in the head one too many times
No, no,
in the
no, no.
trenches.
There was one time I might have gotten knocked out a little bit, but not enough to forget everything that happened.
Well, I'm glad to know you got out of there in one piece for the most
Yeah.
part. So,
Yeah.
so what was the transition like from high school to college? At Eastern Michigan, you were one of the top scorers on the team. In fact, you were the second leading scorer on the team all 3 years you were there. You got your 1,000th point, I believe, at Eastern Michigan. You got some other accolades there. So you were doing quite well in your time getting in on the Maction, no pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe I did. This is why I'm a broadcaster, folks, not a comedian. But
Sorry.
what was the transition like, and what do you attribute to the success you had at Eastern Michigan in the 3 years you played there?
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing is just getting adjusted to the pace of things. The pace on the court, you know, it's a new intensity, new speed playing at the collegiate level. And then I think off the court, you know, it's a different pace than what you experience in high school. And so those are probably the biggest things, just adjusting to the pace and the lifestyle of being in college on and off the court. And then I would say another adjustment would have been, I don't know, I think you're on a new team. You know what I mean? New team, new environment. And so figuring those things out. And what was the second part of that question? You asked about the jump, and there was
The
something else.
transition, and I think you're
Yeah.
covering that. You're touching on that, but just that transition from high school to college, because I've lost track as to the number of athletes who tell you how stark the difference is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I think too, you know, coming in as a freshman is kind of like finding your spot, right? You got to figure out, okay, what is my role in mastering whatever your role may be at that time is so important. And learning that, hey, you just went from being, you know, big fish, small pond, to now you're in a bigger pond. You know what I mean? Everybody who's playing was the best at their previous in high school. And so it's also adjusting to that. Okay, now I'm playing with all of the best players. And so how do you separate yourself? How do you make yourself known as far as that goes? And so those were probably the biggest adjustments for me.
Well, you certainly were a big fish in a bigger pond at Eastern Michigan, because part of your scoring technique came from your three-point shooting. You led the team in three-pointers a couple of years, and you also had a penchant for steals on the defensive end. So I'm curious, what led you to develop those aspects of your game that made you a perimeter threat on offense and a potential to be a thief on defense?
Yeah. Well, defensively, definitely just taking pride in it. My dad just always taught me and raised me to take pride in your defense. You know, don't get bullied on the court. And so I think just having that dog mentality defensively was a big part, you know, just from my pops that played a part into that. And just learning to use my length. You know, I wasn't the most athletic at that level. And so it's kind of like, okay, what else can you contribute? And so I think just, you know, having length, long arms, it was like, put them up and get things done, and anticipating passes and things like that. And then as far as scoring, I mean, you know, I knew that being a 3-point threat, it would make drives that much easier. So again, I wasn't a player who was going to break you down one-on-one with my handles. Like, that just wasn't me. And so you have to find another way. Well, how are you going to score? How are you going to make sure that you can score from the outside and get, you know, layups when needed? And so I think my coaches at Eastern very much so helped develop that dog mentality as far as the scoring portion went. They definitely gave me the green light and a lot of confidence. And so I think just what that came with that was just, okay, I'm going to keep repping this out. And just not being a cookie cutter player, I guess, was was a big part of that. I wanted to be a threat in more than one way. So, yeah.
I don't think you were a cookie cutter player, Janay, but based on your stats, even though I said you're more than your stat sheet, I think you were the person who would steal from the cookie jar. You led the conference in steals as a junior.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So my claim to fame is at one point in time I was 11th in the nation in Division One, for steals per game. So that's my claim to fame. Some people don't believe it, but it's there. It's in the stat sheet. So
And they keep the archives available for anyone out there. So I bet you those receipts are still out there. But even now,
yes.
I'm going, yeah, you were impressive. So no, you were not a cookie cutter player. I think
Thank you.
I'm surprised someone didn't send you to jail for all the cookies you stole out of that jar.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from your perspective, what are the ingredients, the techniques that go into being a successful three-point shooter and a successful defender who can get steals at the rate you did?
hmm I think as far as the 3-point shooting goes, is repetition, and making that muscle memory so that everything you do, it's automatic. So that whether no matter what's going on in the game, if it's a roller coaster, if you're tired, if you're fresh, that shot's always going to be the same. I think that's the biggest thing. And I also think just learning how to have a repertoire from the 3-point line, and not just being a stationary shooter. Can you sidestep when you shoot? You know what I mean? Can you shoot off the dribble, pull up and shoot a three? And so I think being able to add to my bag in that aspect and have different ways to shoot a three, it made my 3-point shot more of a threat, because you couldn't just close out and contest. Like I'm moving around. And I think what contributed to that too is I had great point guards around me, and Shea Sweeney and Sasha Daly and those guards and Mike Robinson, like they knew how to give me the ball. So I didn't have any problems as far as that went. As long as I made sure they had a passing lane, they made it happen. And so that was a huge part of it too. I think as far as defensively goes, it's really just anticipation, set the defense up. And I think a lot of times, players kind of skip over that. And so it's really just creating a defensive IQ for yourself, really, and anticipating those passes. And when you can do that, you can make some things happen.
Well, you certainly did. And I think that's why I found your journey a bit surprising, because after 3 successful years at Eastern Michigan, you decided to change course and went to the Big Ten in Nebraska. So when did you start thinking about changing things up? How hard was that decision to transfer? And what were some of the emotions, the thought process, all of that? What did you have to contend with as you were weighing whether or not to make the move?
Yeah. And, people have their different reasons for transferring. Mine wasn't because of a bad experience. I love playing at Eastern Michigan. I love the basketball family that I had created there. And I was having a lot of success. I think I just felt like, hey, it was a dream of mine when I was in high school to play at the Power 5 level. You know what I mean? Is that where I landed when I first started? No. And when I committed to Eastern Michigan, I had no intentions of, hey, I want to transfer out. I was in it for the long haul. And I think just as I recognized, hey, you're at a point where you have your stats speak for itself. And so I was in a spot where I could make that move. And then I think just with the coaching change as well, it's kind of like, hey, this fits, this is a good time. Was that an easy decision? Not at all. And I think my mom could speak to that the most, as I called her many a times crying on the phone. Even up to when I went back to campus to receive, just to make the transfer official, get my things. I called her again, crying, like, this is so hard, because I was leaving my basketball family, but I was also leaving my family too, that was in Toledo. And so it wasn't an easy decision at all, but it was something that, hey, you aspired to do this at one point in time, so let's make it happen right now. And so that's what led into making that decision, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Although I wonder if you maybe could have taken a time machine with the changes now to transfer rules and NLI, Janay. I feel like maybe you started your career a little too early.
Yeah, I know. I know. They've got it nice now. It's all right though. We set it up for them, paved the way for the athletes now, and I'm happy for them.
Right. And I feel the same way, but I'm going, man, if only a few years later, if this happened a few years ago, who knows? I think you're happy with the direction you've taken your career in now and all of that. So
Hmm.
we're having a little fun here. But up until this year, first time transfers did have to sit out a year.
Hmm.
So you had to take that, I want to say gap year, because you were enrolled in classes at Nebraska, but you weren't
Yeah.
able to play. When you transferred, you had to wait before you could resume your playing career. So what
Hmm.
was that year like, having to sit out? How difficult was it to be a spectator? And what did you learn from that year that you feel helped you when you were eligible to play and later on with what you're doing now?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I honestly I was grateful for that year. Of course, it was hard at the moment because played a lot of scout team, things like that. And at any time a player just wants to get on the court, you're ready for that. But I think it gave me time to adjust off the court to okay, you're again new environment. Get situated with my courses, as far as that goes, making sure I'm on track, up to date with those things. I think just getting adjusted to a new coaching staff. That staff in Nebraska, they're amazing. And I was very lucky to have them. And yeah, I think just being able, it was just an adjustment period, really. What did I learn in that period? It was definitely a humbling situation as my role kind of changed and as I had suffered injury as well throughout, just trying to bounce back and recover from that. But I think being sidelined, it did create that coach's mentality in me because now you're doing a little more observing than what you normally would as a player who's in the game all the time. And so I just got to see the game from a different perspective. And I think that helped me as far as, okay, now you got to figure out how can you contribute to the game without stats. You can't put up stats. So how are you contributing? So I think it was learning how to do that without scoring, without getting the steal. So it was becoming a vocal leader, a leader by example, things like that. And a lot of relationship building. I was big on relationships anyways prior to that, but I think a lot of it I really learned then, okay, people aren't going to listen to you right now just because you're good. Like, one, they haven't seen it because you were at this school, but two, you can't really show it too much because you're not playing. And so it's like, what else do you have for your teammates in order for them to be receptive and to listen to you? And I found that was relationship building, and so I worked my butt off on as far as that goes, and just making sure that we had a family atmosphere with our team. And I think that legacy has carried on with the program right now. From what I've heard from the staff, those girls love each other and they're having a lot of fun together. And so I like to think, maybe I had to play a part in that. But yeah, so that was a huge part of a lot of what I learned throughout that time.
You touched on something that I wanted to bring up that complicated the transition a bit. After you finished your redshirt year, you noted having to contend with an injury, which
Mm-hmm.
limited your productivity in the first half of your only season at Nebraska. You were able to come on strong in the second half and show what you were about, but what would you describe in terms of the management process with your foot injury that kept you from playing to the best of your ability? And when you were able to finally get the go ahead, you didn't have to worry about that anymore and got to remind everyone, this is what I'm about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the redshirt year kind of prepped me for it because again, when you're in that injury situation, it's the same as being essentially the same as being a redshirt. Like you can't perform. So they're a lot like it's kind of like, hey, so how are you contributing to the team and making sure they're still good? And so I think that redshirt season prepped me a lot for that. But mentally, it was tough. You know, it's like I sat around for a year, waited to play, and then right before the season starts, here I am having foot surgery and 7 games in, still not able to fully play. You know what I mean? And so mentally, it was a battle, and it challenged my faith a lot for sure. But I think in those moments, God definitely grew me, and a lot of what I experienced then with that injury time and even with the redshirt period, it helped me be a better coach now, because I can see the game from more than one perspective as far as a player goes. And so it's definitely helped me with my coaching now, with the way that I handle my players. It's, and just being more aware of the mental aspect of things and knowing that, hey, there's a lot more going on mentally with players as well. And so that's probably what I'd say with that. But again, I mean, I kept grinding through the injury. You always find ways to do things. Hey, I don't have a foot. Well, I got 2 arms. So let's let's figure out what we can do with these 2 arms. And so, form shooting, still building muscle, things like that, just working that out. And then, like you said, on my return, I was ready to bounce back, had to remain confident. And again, just figuring out your role as you're kind of jumping in after a third of the season has started. So your role looks a little bit different than what it was at Eastern Michigan. And so just trying to play into that and going, well, what can I do? But also making sure that, okay, when you do step on the court, you better be ready. And knowing that as soon as you do step on the court, you're not going to have like this 10-minute period to make mistakes and warm it and do whatever. Like, you got to turn it on now. And so I think that's really where I just from a mental aspect too, is being able to just turn it on now, mentally and performance wise, and make things happen. And I believe I did that.
Well, you certainly went out with a bang, because the final game of your playing career, as I understand it, was a trip to the NCAA tournament, a venue you didn't reach at Eastern Michigan, and you got to showcase one last time how prepared, how ready you were, led the team, led Nebraska in scoring in your game against Arizona State. Even though you weren't able to make a deep run in the tournament that year, you had a goal of playing at a Power 5 school. You were able to do that at Nebraska. And then on top of that, you got the opportunity to play in the big dance. The women's tournament gets more and more publicity every year. Even if you weren't able to make that deep run that I think every team hopes to make when they get into that field of 64, how gratifying was it for you to work your way through the redshirt year, work your way through playing on one foot, and then showcasing your capabilities, having 2 arms and 2 feet, as you alluded to, but to have that opportunity to go out like you did, even if it wasn't a winning effort, what did that do for your confidence and your journey to have that showcase one more time?
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing, honestly. And it just went to show that, hey, like, all that hard work you put in leading up to this, it was worth it. You know what I mean? And it did show for something, because, when you hit that wall, you either go left or you go right. You know what I mean? And it's so easy to go left and shut down. But I think it really just showed, like, hey, all that effort, all that work you put in, it was worth it, and it got you this. It may not have been, like you said, a deep run into the tournament, or even if the tournament didn't happen, just realizing, like, at the end of the day, you got to play in the Big Ten, and that's something that not too many people get to say. But I think I attribute a lot of it to, even just my teammates, and seeing and my coaches when they expressed their gratitude just for me being on the team. I think that was also something that was like, hey, no, maybe your accolades didn't line up with what you had at Eastern Michigan, but as far as your goal of making an impact with this team that wasn't related to basketball, you did that. Like, you made that happen. And so I think that alone was special enough, even if I wouldn't have made it, that far.
But you did, and no one can ever take that away. It's up in the archives too, just like your Eastern Michigan stats and all of that. So We've got the receipts.
Yep.
Something I like to ask of the players who go D1, because you get a chance to connect with a lot of people. You mentioned getting to play alongside Phyllis Webb at Eastern Michigan for the years you were there, and then playing in the Big Ten. So you got to see some other notable names. Who was the toughest player to go against as a college basketball player?
Oh, my entire career? Shoot. I would probably say, man, that's a tough one. The toughest player? Man. I mean, I guess off the top of my mind, Kanesha Bell probably is one of the that's one of my really good friends. She's a sister of mine, but I'd probably say Kanesha Bell. I mean, a kid with a lot of swag when she played, you know what I mean? Like, she got the handle, she got the speed, she's got the motor. And so I think just playing against her was probably one of my toughest feats. If not her, I'd probably say Crystal Bradford from Central Michigan. Played against her as well when I was at Eastern Michigan. So that was probably another tough one too. I mean, she's in the league now, so that speaks for herself.
I remember Bradford. I think I covered her once when I was working the college beats. And like you said, made it to the WNBA and helped put Central Michigan on the map. And as we're seeing, some of those mid-majors are getting a little more exposure, more opportunities now. We're not quite at the level of parity that the men have, but these things take time. But Crystal Bradford, Kanesha Bell, I'm just going to make the presumption that you're glad you're friends with Kanesha, because I imagine, as you said, it wasn't fun to play against her at Kennedy or at Minnesota.
Yep. No, it's good that we're friends. But we knew once we stepped on the court, hey, I'm coming for you, she's coming for me. And then off the court, the moment the game's over, we're hugging it out. Hey, love you, sis, all those things, families talking. So that's just the way it goes.
Were you able to get any steals against her?
No, not hers. Was maybe you play a player like Kanesha Bell. It's like, hey, just stay in front. You don't worry about stealing the ball. Just you stay in front and you're successful.
And I think a lot of other players would agree with that. I covered Kanesha a few times at Kennedy, got to see her play a few times in Minnesota, and she made it to the pros too, like Crystal Bradford did. So who was it that shared that Minnesota is a slept-on state when it comes to basketball talent? I don't think people are sleeping on them anymore, with Paige Beckers and Jalen Suggs, and now Olivia Olson, who's doing big things. But the pieces were in place long before them. Folks like yourself and Nia Coffey and Nia Holly, and I remember covering Taylor Hill. So don't sleep on these Minnesota kids.
Let them know, Mike. Let them know.
Well, that's why I'm here. So after you concluded your playing career, as we touched on at the start of the podcast, coaching was an accidental discovery. So after you finished your playing career, got your degree, what did you have in mind in terms of transitioning into the career field, whether it was playing professionally or elsewhere? And when did you start to consider getting into coaching?
Yeah. So I'd always wanted to play professionally overseas, and so as my career was winding down, I knew, okay, got to find an agent, got to do these different things. And so playing overseas was something that I want to try out. I love to travel, and I love basketball. And so I figured, hey, let's put the two together and make it happen. And then initially I was like, okay, after that, then I'll continue my career in the medicine. Was still kind of on the edge about it at that point. And so I got locked in with an agent, and we ended up doing a tour in Italy, which is basically like a showcase. And so I got to play in Italy, do those things, which was an amazing time in itself. And then as I was in Italy, like I said earlier, I just was praying about it and asking God kind of like, hey, what is it that you want me to do? Do you want me to continue playing, or do you want me to take a different route? And at that point, I was thinking, I think coaching is going to be what I do outside of this. And so just a lot of prayer as far as that goes. And I ended up being offered a position, a coaching position while I was still playing. And so it was just in that moment where again, I prayed again and said, God, what do you want me to do? Wherever it is you want me to go, I will go. And just being real, like, hey, it's gonna be really hard to leave basketball. This is gonna be tough, but I fully believe that God's plan is always better than whatever we may have mocked up. And it turns out that was true. And so in that moment, I made the decision to accept the assistant coaching position at Jamestown, and that's kind of how all of that unfolded. And I quickly learned, okay, God, I understand why you have me here, why coaching is where you call me to, and not a continued basketball career. I believe that, God blessed me with an amazing college experience. Despite my injury, I always had a great team to be around, always had great staff to be around. And, the staff at Eastern Michigan and the staff at Nebraska both offered very different things as far as my development and growth. And both of those things have been a perfect combination for me now being a coach. And so, and just my experience with my teammates is like, hey, that's the experience I need to make sure that my players are having amongst each other. You know what I mean? From player to player. And so I'm grateful for all of that. I was happy, and it was just God saying, hey, we're going to close this chapter and start a new one.
I might have to issue a correction though, Janay, because you haven't really left the sport of basketball. I mean, you're not playing actively anymore, but you never really left. You jumped right from playing into coaching. So
yeah,
you still get to stay involved.
Yeah. And every now and then I jump in with my players, so I guess I still get to scratch an itch. But yeah, I mean, never left the game. It's just taking on a new role, which I think for anyone is tough. Whenever you give up that player role, I mean, that's been so much of your life since most of us since we were kids. That's where we've been. And so it was tough just to change hats like that.
That being said, if you ever do get another itch to play, I had Kasheen Alexander on my series last week, and
Okay.
she would continue playing in semi-pro leagues, local leagues, things like that while she was coaching. And she said she would still do that. Now she is, of course, raising her daughter, but she said when she was at North Dakota State, Florida Atlantic, she looked for a place to play because she loved the sport that much. So if you get an itch, maybe there's a local league in Mankato, or maybe you come back up here. I'm sure you've got some connections who could
Yeah.
hook you up in the Twin
Yeah.
Cities.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Janay, I asked this quite a bit. What is that transition like from going from player to coach, and how surreal is it that after getting instruction for all those years from your high school, your college coaches, you mentioned the late Joey Waters, who is no longer with us, and the guidance, the support, you speak highly of all the places you got to play. Now you get that turn to provide that guidance and mentorship role. What is that transition like?
Yeah, it's been eye-opening. I definitely have a new appreciation. I mean, even just being on coach's side, I gained even more appreciation for my coaches, because I'm like, this is a lot. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that as a player, it just doesn't cross your mind. You're just like, oh yeah, like those things are just supposed to happen. They're supposed to get done. But there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes from coaches to make sure these things are happening and to make sure that the player experience is what it should be. And so definitely have a new appreciation for all of my coaches. So shout out to them. I think another adjustment is just seeing what these players are going through, and adjusting to that, and just remembering, okay, put yourself back in your shoes when you were a player, when you were that age, freshman, you were a sophomore, you junior, you senior. Like, remind yourself of those moments, because it's so easy to, on the coach's side, like, well, you should just do it. Like, what's the issue? Just do it, and just think that the players are just supposed to fall in line, right? But I so often have to remind myself, no, Janae, like you didn't even do you didn't even do that naturally, or you didn't do X, Y, and Z. And so I think that's the one, just the constant reminder of understanding the player's mentality is probably another adjustment. Um, yeah, those would probably be the two biggest ones.
And whatever your ultimate goal is in terms of coaching, whether it's a head coaching position, getting a D1 spot, I'm not sure where this journey will go. And I think that's
Mhm.
what's exciting and harrowing at the same time as a coach, knowing how
Yeah.
volatile things can be. But how significant is your role knowing that you're a female coach of color, whether it was Jamestown, MSU-Mankato, or wherever you end up in the future? How vital do you think your presence is for athletes that you might have to scout at AAU or
Mhm.
high school events, the athletes you work with? I know MSU-Mankato has some athletes of color on their roster, but what do you think your presence means for the younger generation?
Mhm. Yeah. I think, being a Black coach, it does carry some different weight, you know what I mean? And I think, I'm definitely a firm believer in representation matters, and so I think just for young Black girls growing up in the game of basketball to see that is an amazing thing, you know what I mean? And in times right now where a lot of these social injustices are surfacing, it's not that they haven't been happening, it's just the fact that they're surfacing, and so it's talked about more. People are asking them more questions, things like that, maybe questioning them more, for them to have someone to go to on staff and talk about these things. I tell my players all the time, no matter who it is, hey, my office is open 24/7. You know what I mean? If you need me, come by, talk to me, and just making sure that they're okay. And so I definitely think it does hold a different weight. I take pride in that, and making sure that I am a good representative in that too. But also for people to realize I'm human too. So it's I'm gonna make mistakes, things like that, and not to hold those things against me. And so, like I said, I take pride in that, um, and it's definitely something that you're able to. I think teaching also other, young Black players, hey, like this is how you handle the things that are going to arise throughout your career as they're happening, or maybe speaking to them about future events if I see kind of what's going to happen, and just talking to them and teaching them how to navigate, honestly, and not even just navigate in the basketball, but navigate life. You know what I mean? And I say navigate because there are things that, being Black in general, or of any ethnicity, there's different things that you have to figure things out, being in other spaces. And so I think that alone, teaching those athletes to navigate those spaces, how to deal with maybe if there is anger, if there's pent up, whatever it is, towards another group of people, how to properly cope with those things, and how to properly communicate with people when maybe there is a little bit of tension there, issues. Okay, here's how you can properly communicate that. You know what I mean? And educate other people. I think teaching them how to educate, because when you're young, you're a little more of a hothead than when you're older. And so when you're young, it's like, you get angry, but just learn how to navigate those things. And I think our that younger generation now has done an outstanding job with athletes speaking out about these things, at different things, wanting to create groups, things like that, um, to talk about social injustices and just the racial things that are going on now. I think that generation has done an outstanding job. And so I'm just merely a person here to help mentor them in whatever they need.
Well, I have no doubt that you will succeed in that role. Otherwise, you wouldn't be
Thank
in
you.
Mankato.
Yeah, yeah.
What are you most excited about as you start the next leg of your journey? As I mentioned before, I had Kasheen on, and she said from her experience, no to paths are like when it comes to coaching in terms of opportunities, where you end up. She started D2 and she's been working at several D1 schools now. And then other times you get Lindsay Whalen, who jumped right into a Power 5 coaching position. There's no wrong way to do it, but with a couple of years of experience under your belt at Jamestown, what are you excited about as the next leg of your journey begins at MSU-Mankato?
Yeah, I think probably player development is probably number one. I shouldn't say number one, but the first thing that pops into mind is just the player development aspect of things on and off the court again. I think, just being able to hone in on players' skills and, kind of learning how to do that better and how to maybe get results faster, not in a manner of, pressuring the athlete more, but hey, here's how I can help an athlete be successful in a faster manner. I think that's one of the things that has been good for me. I think, just working for Thad Sankey at Jamestown, I think he even helped me become a better person. And you become a better person, you become a better coach. And so I know there's things that he taught me as far as servanthood, serving your players, and patience, just having a patient and kind heart towards your players. Those are definitely huge things that he helped me develop as a person. And so I'm excited to take those new learned skills into my coaching career here and being able to refine those and really showcase those things. So yeah, like you said, I think everybody's journey is different. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but we all end up somewhere that's right for us.
No right or wrong way, as long as you don't punch anyone in the face, right?
Right, yeah.
But you're too nice for that, so I don't think we have to worry about hearing any reports of that nature.
Nope, not at all.
There are a few questions I like to ask of all my guests, Janay, who come on, because it's always fun to hear some of these answers. So throughout your playing career, what was your most exciting moment and your most embarrassing moment?
Most exciting, probably making it to the championship game. My sophomore year of college? I think at Easton. I'm trying to think, it was my sophomore or my junior year. It's a shame I don't remember. I don't know, sophomore, junior year, one of the two. We made it to the championship game at Eastern Michigan. That was probably the most exciting, just because of the year we had leading up to that. It was the year we had lost our teammate Shanice Hetty, and so we dedicated that season to her. And so I think just being able to make it to that point, knowing that she'd be extremely proud of us, was huge. Did we win that game? No, but I think just knowing how much we overcame to get to that point was huge. And so I'd probably say that was one of the most exciting seasons I had, honestly. Yes, we had that downfall, but I mean, it really brought something different out of us, I'll say, for sure. And so just the bond that we created that year, because we had to lean on each other. We were who we had. We all experienced a loss. And so it just brought different things out from us. And so probably the most exciting moment. The most embarrassing, oh man, what would be the most embarrassing moment of my career? Shoot, Mike, I don't know, man. There's so many dumb things I've done. I'm usually the clumsy one. Like it's bad. So I don't know if I can give you a specific moment though. Most embarrassing. I have to put on a little thinking music for this part of your podcast, and I don't know. I can't come up with anything, honestly. I mean, I'm a klutz. There's too many moments where I've embarrassed myself. So I guess the podcast doesn't get that juice today.
Maybe you were a klutz, although when I watched you play, you were far from it. So I'd like to think that you were such an outstanding, tremendous athlete when it came to three-pointers and steals that you were too good to have embarrassing moments, right?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
You were too talented for that. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? I like to think, yes, that if you can't think of anything, then you were on top of things and you never did anything super silly besides doing this podcast with
Yeah.
me. No, I'm kidding. Uh,
No.
well, that's okay. Well, if you do think of something, maybe, you know what? Maybe you'll start your own podcast or you'll share it
Yeah.
on your pages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe Phyllis will remember.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, you probably call her and she'll tell you enough. So
All right. Well, I don't know what she's up to. Okay. Well, after this, we'll find Phyllis, see what she. But
yeah,
no, I think you were just too good because look at all the points and three-pointers and steals you got. There was no way you could have done anything silly with
I
all
appreciate
that,
that.
with how
I
much you were
appreciate
lighting up the stat sheet.
that.
This question, you might have remembered this. I
Mhm.
order the breakdown guidebook every year to help with research at the high school level. So this is one of the questions they often ask.
Mhm.
And it's always fun to hear what the adults have to say about it. What is the most unusual thing about yourself that people wouldn't know if they met you for the first time?
Most unusual thing. I um that's a good question. I feel like you'd have to ask somebody else this question. That I need somebody to tell me what the most unusual thing is about myself. Um yeah. Man, Mike, you really stumping me today, man. Actually, you know what? I'd probably say because most people, they're like, oh, like she's such a soft voice, like she's sweet, things like that. But my teammates will tell you they think I'm like this authoritative. I'd probably say that they think I'm this authoritative, like I'm always telling people what to do. So maybe that's the most unusual thing. Not the I guess it's probably not the most entertaining for your podcast, but no, when I mean business, I mean business. And so I think some people are kind of like, wow, I wouldn't have expected that from her, but hey, we get down to it. I'm gonna love them though. We're gonna have fun at the same time. I like to have a good time, relax a little bit. But when it's go time, it's go time.
That explains why you got into coaching.
Probably.
That authoritative
Probably.
figure within you.
Yeah, that's probably the one.
Coaching is not for the soft spoken. You need to own yourself if you're going to take on
hmm
that role and work with the next generation of athletes. Although I do have a
Yeah.
few notes here from my research, so we'll see if that
hmm
perhaps triggers your memory banks. When you were playing, at least at Osseo, and I don't know if this carried over to college, but apparently one of your monikers was Jay Nasty.
Yeah. Yep, that was me. That was me. Shoot. And I'm pretty sure that started from my high school teammate, Belinda Barfnick. Well, it's not Barfnick anymore. She's but yeah, so I'm pretty sure it started from her. But it was basically it was because of basketball. It was just she called me Jay Nasty because she's like, oh yeah, Jay Nasty, you're so good. And so that's where it sparked. And from there, like everybody just took it and ran. And so once everybody else took it and ran, I was like, hey, let's make it a tag. So that was for a while my Instagram, Twitter, everything like that name. But then once I became a coach, I was like, probably not the greatest to have that as your tag. I don't know if people would approve of that. So had to switch that up, and I guess be a big girl now. Yeah.
Don't you hate that part about growing up?
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to change monikers. Well, I didn't have to, but I chose to when I got a tip saying the best way to network is to include your name in social media. So I changed mine from the Sports Brain, which I thought was cool and trendy when you're in
Oh
college
yeah.
and high school. And I guess I still know a thing or two about sports, but
hmm
uh, I changed it to, well, I guess one perk about it now, I just switched I kept I just switched Sports Brain with my name. So
Okay.
like now when you find me, there are no like there are no what's the word I'm looking for? Imposters. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
No
Mm-hmm.
imposters. I am the Mike Beaton now.
Yep. You let them know. You gotta let them know,
I'm not
man.
just any Mike. I am the Mike.
The
So,
Mike Beaton. Hey, I respect it. I respect it.
well, and yours is pretty good too. I enjoyed the pun you played off of your name with more greatness
Yes, sir. Yes,
and what you
sir.
strive to be, I imagine.
Yeah. If you ask anybody, they know greatness is always my motto. Gotta be great. That's just what I focus on.
Well, a couple more biographical notes that might fall into the unusual category. Let's see if this still rings true. But there was also a time, and maybe this is still true, but you've never missed an episode of The Walking Dead.
It used to be true. It was probably true up until season 5. After that, I feel like it got, it's just kind of the same thing happening. They get, the group gets whatever, they meet new people, they find a new camp spot, and then somebody comes, fights them, takes over. Somebody probably dies in the midst of that, and then they do it all over again. So I was entertained up until season 5 for sure. Did not miss an episode. But unfortunately, that's not true anymore. So
You're not the only one who came to that conclusion, Janay, so we'll give you a pass
okay.
on that.
Appreciate it.
I like to claim that I have, well, it's not quite as extensive. So I guess I've never missed an episode of The Mandalorian
Okay.
or
Good show.
WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm a pop culture geek. So the MCU TV series and The Mandalorian turned into
Mm-hmm.
my favorite television show of like that would be the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mandalorian's legit, so I'll give you that one.
So I've never missed an episode of The Mandalorian, and I intend to keep that streak active unless they start recycling the same things.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I wonder, I guess we're going in this time capsule here. I wonder if this is true then. So even if you don't watch every episode of The Walking Dead anymore, you apparently also have an obsession with minions.
That one is still true. Obsession might sound kind of weird, but I love them. I love them. I don't know what it is. They're just like the cutest things ever. If I could buy like a real minion, I would. Like that'd be my best friend. So I love them. Yeah, that's me. I had in college when we used to travel around, I had a minion pillow that I gotten from Walmart, and I rolled that thing to the ground until it couldn't give me the soft sleep I needed anymore. And unfortunately I had to throw it away, but I was holding on to it.
Well, maybe one of your players or fellow coaches at MSU-Mankato can get you a new one.
Maybe you'll see me walking through the airport, getting off the bus with the minion pillow.
Now that we've revealed the secret to the world, well, not really a secret, it's still in your profile on Nebraska's page. And then one last thing, which I thought is kind of cool. It sounds like if basketball wasn't your first love, well, volleyball could have been up there, but in an alternate reality, I guess I can say that the MCU is doing that now with their multiverse. So in an alternate reality version of yourself, you might have taken up tennis because I understand you're a big tennis fan, especially the Williams sisters.
Yes, I love the Williams sisters. But I mean, I love watching tennis. Like I love it. I tried playing it early on, and it wasn't gonna work out. So I gave it up, and now I'm just like an avid fan. So I'm a fan of tennis. Love to watch it. My dream is to hopefully see Serena play one day, but I don't know. I got this gut feeling that she's gonna retire really soon. I mean, now she has a kid and everything. I don't know her personally, obviously, so who knows what she's gonna do. But I just got a feeling that she's kind of getting to that point where she might retire. So not sure if that dream will come true, but I hope it does.
And even if it doesn't, you know what? There are a lot of athletes worth checking out. I remember when Coco Gauff made that Cinderella run at the U.S. Open, Naomi Osaka.
Yep.
She's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe a little better than all right.
Yeah.
So maybe you'll get to connect or get to see them play one day, if not the Williams sisters. And how many of them? I think Coco was saying part of that run was beating Venus Williams, who she grew up watching. So we talked about what your presence as a Black female coach could mean to the players. We're seeing examples of that in tennis with the players that have come up idolizing the Williams sisters, and now they get to carry the torch. So, you might have to recalibrate the goals a bit, but you know what? I could see you hanging out at Wimbledon or the Arthur Ashe the Arthur Ashe court at New York for the US Open.
Might catch me there.
Or maybe Australia for the Australian Open. Well, you coached at that time. You might have to, that might
miss that one.
Right. Or maybe if you take up broadcasting, that might free up your schedule a bit. ITs, of course.
True.
Well, and as we touched on throughout this podcast, you've experienced a lot as an athlete, being a multi-sport athlete in high school, and taking those talents all the way to the college level. You played a season professionally, and that included making a change, not because you had a toxic relationship at Eastern Michigan. You just wanted to see if you could accomplish that goal of playing at a Power 5 school. So you've been through a lot, and of course you're experiencing a new side of basketball through your work as a coach. So with everything you've experienced in basketball and in life, what would you tell a younger version of yourself?
Man, the younger version of myself. I'd probably tell myself, don't be a hothead. Tone your ego down a little bit. I'm not like a boastful person, but I think there was moments where I could have humbled myself a little bit more. And so that'd probably be the number one thing I tell myself, my younger self. Definitely just be patient, trust God in this process for you. I think, when you're so caught up in the moment and what's going on now with yourself, and you're young and you're trying to figure it out, and it's like, you don't have to figure it out. God already has it all laid out for you. And so as long as you just, keep your eyes on him and keep praise there and keep your faith in him, like he's going to guide your steps. You know what I mean? He'll lead you to what you need to know. And so tell myself that. And the last thing I'd probably say is gratitude. Just be thankful. Thank everyone around you, from the custodians, the managers, the people the media, just any and everybody. Just thank them, because all of those people play a huge role in performing. I know Gino, he did, Coach Gino did a interview I saw on Twitter the other day. We talked about role players, and he's like, if I don't know who he used, I'll use Alicia Keys. If Alicia Keys goes on stage, but the person whose job it was to roll her piano out on stage doesn't do it, she doesn't play. You know what I mean? And so I think realizing who was rolling the piano out for me, you know what I mean? Who were those people? I'd say as a younger athlete, just recognize that and thank those people. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a $1 million gift card every time, but just see them walk by. Hey, thanks. I appreciate what you're doing, and just realizing those things, because that goes a long ways. So top 2 things, probably tell the younger me.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around this notion that you were a hothead, because I didn't cover you a lot, but I saw you play a few times at Osseo, and I got to cover a couple of the All-Star games you played in, the Intercity All-Star Classic and the Coaches All-Star Series, but you never came off as a hothead.
Yeah, I think it was just more of a pride thing. Sometimes I think because of my pride, I might have been a little too hard on myself. And so I think just telling myself, hey, like, you cool it a little bit and still be successful, I think, from that standpoint. But I don't think it was ever out of hand or extreme where it would inhibit something in my career. But it would probably be one of the little tidbits I give myself.
And I'll leave you with this, since you've touched on how much faith drives what you do. Are there any verses or quotes that you reference for situations? Anything that stands out in terms of advice that you've used to help navigate whatever comes your way in life?
Yeah. Now here's where you're gonna test my memory, Mike. You put me on the spot. It's in Isaiah. But the verse I go by is it's where it's talking about my thoughts are not your thoughts, my ways are not your ways. And that's always been the one that I revert back to, and just understanding that you can't put God in a box, and there's things that he has planned for you and things that he's able to do and miracles he makes happen that we as humans just can't even fathom. And so just understanding that don't put God in a box. That's it, you know. And like I said, as long as you trust him and are willing to step out in faith and wherever he calls you to, like he'll reveal things to you and things will happen that you're just like, wow, that's amazing, and you're so thankful for it. And so that's usually the one I go by, and especially just because of my foot injury at Nebraska, like that was not my thought going into it. That was not, that was not my plan. But clearly God, he allows some things to happen and for the better of his plan. And just knowing that he knew that I had to be prepped to be a coach. And that was one of the things that helped me be, I probably, truth be told, I don't think I'd be the coach I am now if that hadn't happened. And so just being grateful in even the the thorns in your side that are there, that happen.
I don't think anyone plans for an injury, Janay. I'm pretty sure you did not envision a career where, okay, I'm going to have a foot injury or any injury of that sort. So I hear you there.
Yep.
Well, one of my go-tos has turned into a running joke of sorts with Adalia McKenzie, because I shared this with her, and Adalia, highly spiritual. And I'm amazed she remembered this small talk I had. I was at a game and I told her the line I use, or that I reference, that sums up why I've approached you and why I do what I do for sports broadcasting and interviewing, is Galatians 6:9. I'm not sure if that one rings a bell.
No, what does it read?
It goes something like this: that never become weary doing good, because we'll reap a proper harvest if we don't give up. So it's just a way of saying, whatever you're doing, keep pushing. Even if you don't get the dividends right away, it will pay off in due time. And that sums up why I do what I do, because I enjoy meeting people. Like I did last night at the volleyball game I covered, yourself and all the other people I've met in basketball at high school and AAU events. And that's why I keep coming back, because I love to meet people and I love to share their stories. And as you know, being a coach, you can attest to this. We get older, the players don't. The players that we see anyway.
That is so true.
In fact, I've reached the point now where some of the coaches and parents that I've met went to college around the same time I did. I've covered players who have since become coaches or parents, and in some cases both. And when you do this for 15 years, you're like, I might be doing this for too long, because like, I remember when you were in high school and now you're a mother, now you're a coach. I'm like, maybe I should get out of here. No. So
I hear you.
Right. And it's an oral history podcast, and I don't talk a lot about some of those things, but I do like to highlight those aspects, and if that means something to you. And that's where I said, I'd like to think there's no one right way to show your respect and your spirituality, but that Galatians 6:9, that's what drives me to do what I do, because it's a reminder that, hey, as long as you keep doing good, it will come back to you. You don't know when, and I don't try to predict it. You just go along for the ride. And that's something I've said too when I've covered sports. Although I will say, if I have any connections at Mankato, if they need any announcers, I wouldn't mind going down there to call a game or two if they need somebody to fill in.
They need someone.
I tease, of course, but that would be a goal of mine, would be to get a college or a pro. Of course, there's a lot that goes into that. But until then, I've enjoyed building the audience. So I'll leave you with this as we wrap things up here, Janay. For anyone who is looking to get into a career as a basketball player like you did, who maybe has aspirations of playing Division I or playing professionally, or maybe they see themselves as a coach one day. In your case, it
Mhm.
happened by accident, but you love it. And I've got a feeling you're going to be hanging around basketball for a long time as a result of this passion. But what advice would you give to a prospective student athlete who wants to play college or pros, or a prospective coach who
Mhm.
wants to engage in the same opportunity you have as far as guiding, mentoring, and molding that next generation?
Yeah. To the player, I would definitely say, along your journey, like cancel out the noise and don't compare. Like don't compare your journey to the player next to you, because the same way every coach's journey is different, every player's path is different as well. And so I think, if you're in the gym putting the work in, I mean, you're gonna reap a harvest. Like you're gonna see somehow, some way success. Now, may that look different from your friend next to you? You know what I mean? It could look very different. You know what I mean? Everybody has success at different I don't want to say levels because that makes it seem like there's, but different areas. Different areas people have success. And so to the player, I would say, you know, don't worry, don't compare. Don't compare your process to other people. Just grind it out, do what you gotta do, and chase that passion with everything you've got. Chase that passion. Um, for the coach, I would say, um, as far as careers go, I would say tend to the relationships that you have. Genuinely tend to the relationships that you have, because so much of coaching is relationship building and people and who you're talking to and things like that. As far as I mean, look at when people hire people, a lot of times it's from some type of relationship. And so I would say like tend to those relationships genuinely, because the coaching world is smaller than you think. And I think when people know that you're a genuine person, and you really care, people want you to be a part of their program. And because they know that you're going to be a light, that you're going to shine on people. And so I would say that number one. Second thing, always be working on every skill possible. And so whether you're in between jobs or maybe you're somewhere and you want to be at another level, constantly be building and growing as far as, just your coaching repertoire, your knowledge of the game, X's and O's. And yeah, that'd probably be my main. And then actually for the coaching one, the third thing, which is probably number one, um, tend to your players. That's number one. Like I said earlier, for the college athlete or any college student at all, it's such a precious time. I mean, it's their first time, you're on your own, you're trying to figure life out, and we play a part in their life every day. Every day they're spending hours with us every day. And so just tend to those relationships and realize that you are building future America. You are helping build humans outside of what their parents have already done. And so don't take that lightly, and really invest in those players as people first. Yeah.
And I find that a poignant statement, especially with all of the discussions and education, all the lessons we're picking up on mental health. I've talked about this a lot with what players have to deal with now. And
Hmm.
even when you were growing up, social media was a thing, but you
Not
get
like it is now.
right. We didn't have instant highlight reels that would show up on Instagram or Twitter from all of these outlets. And I'm grateful for that because it's another way to promote the game.
Hmm.
But like you said, it can add to that pressure too, because you might see what someone else is doing and it could lead to an inferiority complex,
Hmm.
because in social media, we often tend to share the best side of ourselves. So we don't often share
Yeah.
the hard times, and that's fine.
Hmm.
But that's a lot. And I know you got a taste of that being an athlete yourself, and all the pressures that coaches deal with at the high school level, the college level, where people get so caught up on records. And of course, you want to do well too. But
Yeah.
like I said before, there's going to be a time when people will no longer care how many points you scored or how many games you won. it's what you did to make a difference. And I'm
Hmm.
excited to see how you will continue living that ideology, whether it's in
Thank you.
coaching or elsewhere. Who knows? Maybe we'll get you to call a game or two when if the stars align.
Yeah.
I think you could hold your own
You
since you
think?
have that
Ah.
because you have that authoritative presence about you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
that'll
you might
carry me through.
you got that soft spoken or that soft spoken shell, but once people get to see what the authoritative Janay looks like, I think you could hold your
Yeah.
own.
I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate the time you took to share your story in basketball
Yeah.
and beyond. And well, I don't know what your goals are in coaching, but Kashin mentioned this to me, and maybe we'll work out a similar arrangement that if you get a head coaching position or move up to D1, we might have to reconnect. Kashin gave me that arrangement, and I said I'd do it.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure what your plans are, Janay, but if you find yourself as a head coach or get that Division I job, maybe we'll have to do this again to see how you
Yeah.
progressed.
Yeah, for sure. I'm all about it. But thank you also too, Mike, just for taking time out to do this. And I appreciate that. And just locally, showing everybody what we've got to offer in Minnesota.
Well, I love it because when I got into broadcasting, I again remembered watching you play. It was
Hmm.
before I really developed my brand on YouTube and elsewhere. And one of the regrets I have is that I didn't get to see some of these athletes who went on to do big things. Your graduating
Hmm.
class had Nia Coffey and Rebecca Dahlman, Onyo Simonum from Maranatha, who is entering a medical career, finishing up med school,
Hmm.
and going through some of the names, even from the All-Star series you took part in. Jessica January has been playing
Yeah.
professionally. Tyzasha Holt, she's starting her coaching career at South St. Paul. She wants to mentor kids. So it's amazing to see what everyone from your class alone has gotten themselves into, and
Yeah.
how in that short amount of time
Hmm.
from playing in college and then going into the professional world, how quickly all of you have found ways to be a positive influence. And I'm just
Hmm.
glad I get to play a part in that. So the fan of
Yeah.
me would have loved to see you play a little bit more or covered a few more of your games at Osseo, but I can't go back and fix that.
No,
But I love
no.
sharing these oral history sessions because, again, we got a lot of attention when Paige Beckers was at Hopkins,
Hmm.
and now Olivia Olson, Maya Nagy, some of the names that are putting Minnesota on the map. But there were a lot of athletes that came before them. As I was saying, Minnesota women's basketball has been a hotbed for a long time.
Yes,
When you look
sir.
at the number of Division I athletes and even some professional athletes this state
Hmm.
has put out. So I like
Yeah.
to go back, and it's fun to hear what you've been up to as well, because I remember I don't know how many
Yeah.
more hairstyles you have left, but I remember you think you just had the ponytail at Osseo, and now you've
Yep,
had the
it's a
mohawk,
different
you've
thing
got the
too.
braids. I'm wondering what else is up your sleeve.
Hey, come on, Mike. We gotta keep it going. You gotta be creative. You gotta be creative. Have a little fun.
Well, I can't claim that, so I'll leave that to you because
All right.
I wasn't as lucky with the hair genes, but that's all right. That's why we have people like you.
I guess. I
No.
guess.
Well, once again, thank you, Janay, for sharing your story, and best of luck as you start your coaching career, or I should say the next leg of it at
Mhm.
MSU-Mankato. And who knows where you'll end up, but I can't wait to hear what more news comes your way.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks again, Mike. Appreciate it.
Janay Morton, assistant coach at Minnesota State-Mankato. You can see her on the sidelines this winter, and who knows where she'll end up. And maybe you might see her at another AAU event. So if you're a fellow coach or you want to say hello, she's out there and part of that tight knit community. Like she said, it's a small
Hmm.
world in basketball, and I can attest to that as a broadcaster and writer. So I can't wait to see what comes next. And once more, if you want to be a guest on a future episode of this podcast series, just contact us at the Mike Beaton on Twitter and Instagram. All you need is a good story, and we're happy to share it. So until next time, thanks for watching.